People versus Martinez on 25274, appearances for the record, begin with the government.
Good morning, Your Honor. John Cowden on behalf of the people.
And good morning, Your Honor. Kelly Ellsworth appearing on behalf of Emilio Martinez for our motion, Your Honor.
All right. Okay. And anything before we begin?
Nothing the people, Judge.
Go ahead on your motion.
Your Honor, my motion pretty much speaks for itself. However, we would be requiring some testimony today. I would like to call at least one of the officers, the affiant of the search warrant, Mr. Dylan Neal, at this time.
Okay.
And Trooper, if you could, I'm going to have you approach and pause right there, raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. Nothing but truth, so help you God. Yes, sir. Right there.
And good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Trooper.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Neal, how are you employed?
I'm a trooper with Michigan State Police.
Okay, and for how
Can you
long?
just have him state his full name for the record, please?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you say your full first and last name?
Trooper Dylan Neal, D-Y-L-A-N. Last is Neal, N-E-I-L-L.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No problem. And how long have you been a trooper for Michigan State Police?
Going on 9 years.
Okay. And are you familiar with Emilio Martinez?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And we're here today for a case involving a search of a home. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
And that was for the home that was located, I believe, over on Andre Street. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
You were the drafter of that affidavit. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And the purpose of that search warrant, of that affidavit, was to obtain a search warrant in order to search the residence over at South Andre. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you drafted search warrants before?
Yes.
And in terms of your opportunity to review this search warrant, have you done so prior to coming into court today?
Yes.
Was everything true at the time of your drafting of that affidavit?
Yes.
Was there any allegation that was that you found to be untrue after you drafted the affidavit and submitted to the court for signature?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Were you the person that actually searched? You ended up searching the home. Is that true?
I did minimal in terms of searching. It's kind of a team effort by multiple troopers on scene.
Okay. Did you search the vehicle?
No, I did not.
Okay. I want to refer now to your affidavit. There are certain numbers that are, or letters that are listed in the affidavit, indicating each and every one of your allegations. Turning to allegation C, you indicated that Emilio was nervous and that he was looking around the interior of the vehicle in an attempt to find something. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. In an attempt to find something, was that based off of anything in particular or no?
It was based on training experience, based on his movements and how he was reaching around, looking throughout the vehicle, based on the observations that I saw from him.
Okay. So there was a point in time where you pulled over Mr. Martinez and for a traffic stop. Is that true?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you were able to look inside of the vehicle. Is that true?
I could see inside the vehicle, if that's what you mean, yes.
Okay.
It wasn't a search that was completed at that time.
You had your flashlights out,
Yes.
and you were also with your other partner, trooper. Is it Kuvlak or Kovalak?
Kovaluk. Yes.
Kovalak. Okay. So you were on the driver's side,
Correct.
and Kovalak was on the passenger side.
Initially, he eventually ended up making his way over to the driver's side as well.
And you had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Martinez during that traffic encounter. Is that true?
Yes,
And you had your flashlights out and you're flashing it inside of the vehicle?
yes.
And did you notice anything inside of the vehicle?
I guess, what do you mean by that?
Did you see any illegal, any drugs or firearms inside of that vehicle?
No, not at that time.
Okay. Well, did you ever find drugs or guns at any time?
No,
Okay,
I guess within the vehicle is what you're referring to, correct?
correct.
Yes, no, nothing was found inside the vehicle. There was during the inventory search, I believe, Recovaluk located a box of Narcan in the trunk.
So we can get to that. Now, the vehicle was found at the residence over at South Andre Street. Is that true?
Yes, after he fled from the traffic stop, that's where it was located.
Okay, and that was located about 7 or 8 minutes after that. Is that true?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, and that's because Emilio tendered to you his ID, his driver's license. Is that true?
Upon initial contact, yes.
So you had a physical copy of his driver's license?
Yes.
So you knew where his address was?
It was not on his driver's license. We ended up finding that from his probation information and a few other searches that we were doing while attempting to locate him.
So after he fled, you still had a copy of his driver's license, so you knew who he purported to be. Is that true?
Yes, he identified himself, yes.
Okay. And when you found that vehicle, was it impeding traffic in any way?
No, it was parked in a parking lot.
It was parked in a parking lot next to his residence?
Correct.
Okay. Going to the affidavit, letter H, it indicates that the suspect vehicle was towed from the address for preservation. What did you mean by that?
It was preservation based on completing a later search of the vehicle to prevent it from any other possible evidence being destroyed or removed from it.
Was that vehicle searched prior to it being towed?
No, the vehicle was actually pulled off the lot first and an inventory search was completed while it was still on scene. But a full search of the vehicle was not completed until later.
Do you have procedure and protocols through the Michigan State Police for inventory searches?
Yes, we do.
And what is the purpose of an inventory search as you understand it?
The inventory search is used to document items of value when a vehicle is being towed.
Okay, and was that the purpose of this inventory search?
Yes, it was.
Okay, was it used for investigative purposes?
Based on what was observed in the vehicle, we ended up using, like I said, we located a box of Narcan that was used for the search warrant, but it was not the initial intent of the search.
What was the initial intent of your search?
Again, to document any items of value that were in the vehicle upon it being towed.
And you, and this was prior to you getting a search warrant for the home, is that true?
We were in the process of drafting that search warrant, yes.
Okay. And at the time, were you, did you and the officers, why did you decide to do an inventory search before you got the authority to do the search warrant of the automobile?
The vehicle was to be removed from the area to prevent, based on our perimeter in the surrounding area, we were concerned with the possibility of a suspect coming out and attempting to flee again from based on the positioning of the apartment and the vehicle. So the vehicle was removed from the area in order to prevent any possible issues in regards to that. And again, the inventory search was completed upon it being removed.
How many police officers were out there?
I don't recall the exact number.
And it was snowy out, is that fair to say?
I mean, there was snow.
So you thought that he was gonna leave the residence and get inside of the vehicle, start the vehicle, and leave?
The door to the The door from the apartment to the vehicle was approximately 10 feet away. There were no officers near the apartment because of safety concerns. A wide perimeter was established on the apartment, and the suspect had already fled, dragging 2 officers once already. We were concerned with the officer safety aspect of him potentially doing that again if he were to attempt to get to the vehicle and flee.
The vehicle was 10 feet away, parked from the door to enter inside of the apartment,
I'm estimating, but approximately, yes.
but it was in a parking lot?
Yes.
Could you tell if the keys were inside of the vehicle?
We could not.
Okay. And that was the basis for towing the vehicle?
The purpose of towing the vehicle was to preserve it. The purpose for towing it at the time that it was towed was what I just described.
And ultimately, an inventory search was done, and there was no drugs or firearms found inside of the vehicle. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. There was this bottle of Narcan. Is that true?
It's not really a bottle. I believe it was a box
A box of Narcan of, is it not naloxone? Is
Yes,
that
sir.
commonly referred to? Okay, that's Narcan. And was that found in the trunk of the vehicle?
Yes.
In order to get inside of the trunk of the vehicle, do you have to open it? Is it locked?
I'm not sure what process they went through to open it.
Okay,
I was not involved in the inventory search, sir.
but for safekeeping of the property, the trunk was opened and searched? Is that what you're testifying to?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And then you listed this box of Narcan in your affidavit. True, you recall doing that?
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose of that was to, as evidence that my client was a drug user? Is that true?
Correct.
And you believe that because there was a box of Narcan that was in the trunk of the vehicle, coupled with his criminal history that we'll get to in a second, then that means that he was a drug user, so that there was a fair probability then that there would be drugs inside the home? Is that what your thinking was?
Yes.
So ultimately, that search was used for an investigative means. Is that true?
The items that were observed in plain view during the inventory search were used in investigative means.
It was prior to you receiving a search warrant for the automobile, which you ultimately got.
We did not get a search warrant for the automobile. We received consent from the registered owner, which was Mr. Paul Martinez.
You got consent from him prior to you receiving the signed search warrant?
No, what I'm saying is that a search warrant was never drafted for the vehicle. He gave consent for us to search the vehicle after the fact. After the vehicle had already been towed, it was approximately 2 days later and was not involved in the current incident that we're speaking of.
So you're saying that in your search warrant, you weren't requesting that also to be searched was any vehicles?
I apologize. That was actually listed in there. So yes, essentially, yes, the vehicle was roped into that. Mr. Martinez did later also consent to the vehicle as well.
After it was already searched?
After an inventory search was completed.
With respect to item J, you listed some of it, my client's criminal history dating back to 2017. And you also indicated that he was convicted of unarmed robbery. How were you able to verify that he was convicted of unarmed robbery?
It was based on his criminal history search.
Did you perform that or somebody else?
Believe Sergeant Kemmer did, and I observed it from there.
Are you aware that he was not in fact convicted of unarmed robbery? It was larceny from a person?
If I could review the search warrant there. I'm not 100% sure what exactly was written for like that. I'm unsure of that, I guess.
You're unsure if you listed unarmed robbery?
Yeah, if I could review the search warrant.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Sure, absolutely.
So I'm just directing your attention to J. If you'd like, you could just read that last sentence.
Okay. Suspect also has multiple prior convictions for retail fraud, organized retail fraud, and unarmed robbery. So that was apparently done in error. I was unaware of that.
Okay. Because also in there, you said that he has a history of narcotics use and violent crimes. And I could direct your attention again, if I may approach again, I suppose, Your Honor. What crimes there are violent crimes in J?
I guess I was referring to the history of the unarmed robbery and larceny, subsequent larceny from a person.
Okay, a larceny from a person, you consider that a violent crime?
I consider unarmed robbery a violent crime.
Okay. So that's what you were referring to as the unarmed robbery charge as a violent crime?
I believe he also has multiple convictions for resisting and obstructing police officers as well.
Okay. Do you know, resisting obstructing, do you agree that that could be a large variety of things? That doesn't necessarily have to be violence. It could be something that's not complying with a lawful command, for instance.
I would still consider that to be violent in nature in the fact that you are resisting a police officer.
You also listed on item K that, and I'll read this, a client knows based on his training and experience that suspects who are attempting to flee from prosecution will do so prior to identification. Why did you list that sentence?
It's based on my training and experience. It's standard for suspects that are attempting to flee based on things such as suspects tend to flee based on what they're attempting to conceal. If they're attempting to conceal their identity, such as fleeing for not having a license, not having or having warrants, things like that, they will usually attempt to flee prior to being identified. Suspects that are attempting to conceal contraband will usually flee after they have identified themselves and prior to being discovered.
But in Mr. Martinez, he identified himself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as you indicated, suspects flee because they have bench warrants for their arrests.
As I stated, suspects usually that have those warrants attempt to flee prior to identifying themselves. Mr. Martinez fled after he identified himself, leading me to believe that he was trying to conceal something further than those warrants.
And you were aware that he had those bench warrants out for his arrest?
Not at the time, no.
Okay, but then you discovered that?
Later, yes.
Okay. And you indicated that in your search warrant that Amelia was nervous. Is that true?
Yes.
And that was based upon your personal observations?
Yes.
When you have a traffic stop encounter, is it common for people to be nervous when they interact with you?
At times, I wouldn't say everybody is, but it is. There's different levels to nervousness. There's different indications of what that nervousness is indicating.
Okay. Are people nervous when they speak to you when they have bench warrants for their arrest?
They could be.
Yeah. Okay.
Some people are pretty open and honest and not nervous at all about it.
Okay. So just to kind of sum up your affidavit, the fact that that Amelia was nervous, the fact that there was a Narcan box discovered in the trunk of a vehicle based upon an inventory search that you say was valid, and because of some prior convictions of Emilio, you believe that you had probable cause in order to search the entire residence of the home.
I think you're paring that down to a very short summation of what was stated in the entire affidavit.
Well, what else was more material than those things I just said?
Again, the entire affidavit is what was reviewed for the search warrant. Again, you're paring it down into a very small summation of it.
Well, what else is there?
There's
Your training and experience?
approximately 3 pages worth of an affidavit. I'm not going to say that just based on 3 sentences, my entire affidavit is summed up in that.
With respect to the inventory search, just lastly, and then I'll be done. What is your procedure and protocol for Michigan State Police for inventory searches?
Again, the inventory search, when a vehicle is being towed, we are to complete an inventory search to document any items of value that are in the vehicle. At that point, UD 91 is completed, which is the form that documents all that information, and the vehicle is towed from there.
Do you have a written standardized policy?
You?
Okay. Have you reviewed that before?
Yes.
Okay. When was the last time you reviewed it?
I can't say the exact time.
Do you follow it?
Yes.
Do you do an inventory search of every vehicle that you tow?
Yes.
Do you do it prior to, do you do the inventory search prior to the vehicle being towed?
It depends. I guess usually we try to do it prior to it leaving the scene if that's still safe and appropriate, but nevertheless, the purpose of the inventory search is to document items of value. So if it cannot be completed on scene, we have done it where we completed it back at the tow yard before, where it's a safer environment.
But in this particular situation, you wanted to do an inventory search of the vehicle as an investigatory means to get potential evidence to use in a search warrant.
No.
No?
No.
I have additional questions.
Mr. Kelvin.
I just have a few questions for you, Trooper. Do you recall what the initial traffic stop was for?
It was a broken headlight.
Okay. When you approached Mr. Martinez, we've gone back and forth that you appeared nervous. How exactly did you appear nervous?
Mr. Martinez, first off, stated that he was nervous. Upon initial activation of the traffic stop, observed his vehicle start to veer and was slowed to come to a stop, veering all the way almost into the opposite lane of travel. Upon making contact with Mr. Martinez, was unable to roll down his window, and when instructed he could just open the door to speak with me, he continuously attempted to force the window down. And attempts, based on training experiences, is usually an attempt to create a barrier between himself and law enforcement. When the door was eventually opened, again, he stated that he was nervous. His actions were very erratic. He constantly stated that he lives right around the corner, even though he wasn't asked. He kept looking around the vehicle. He kept reaching around the vehicle. When I asked him for his registration and insurance for the vehicle, he said that wasn't in there. And when I asked him if he wanted to look for any paperwork for the vehicle, he was very hesitant to open up any compartments. Anytime he did look for any paperwork, he turned his entire body, shielding me from seeing anything inside the vehicle. And then when he was eventually asked to exit the vehicle, Mr. Martinez again stated that he was nervous and asked for a second to collect himself, and then immediately again began reaching around the interior of the vehicle, and eventually ended up shifting the vehicle into drive and driving away.
Okay. What happened when he drove away?
Trooper Kovalik and I had attempted to extract him from the vehicle. As he drove away, we were still physically engaged with him, causing him to drag us down the road for approximately 100 to 200 feet.
Okay. So eventually, roughly 10 minutes after that, you guys are able to track him down to this Andre address.
Roughly, yes.
And through some research, you find out that he's probably there. That's his address and lease application, correct?
Yes.
Prior to you guys doing anything, searching the car, doing a search warrant, did you try to get him out of the house?
Yes, we did.
What did you do exactly?
We made multiple callouts utilizing the PA system, activated our siren to further notify occupants of the residence that we were there and asking them to exit. That time, after Mr. Martinez failed to exit, then the search warrant was drafted.
Okay. And we've talked about Narcan quite a bit in your roughly 9 years as a trooper. Do you have experience with Narcan?
Yes.
In that 9 years, what is it typically used for?
Narcan is used by narcotics users as a, it's used to combat potential overdose. So drug users will utilize it when they're feeling the effects of narcotics and feel like they're beginning to overdose. They use Narcan to come out of it.
Okay, and Mr. Ellsworth asked you a little bit about your guys' procedure with inventory searches. When you guys perform an inventory search, is there any specific time frame that you have to do it in or any specific location?
No, it's mainly done as quickly and safely as possible. So in this situation, based on the positioning where the car was, we weren't able to do the inventory search where it was initially located. So we had the vehicle pulled out of the parking lot, off scene. An inventory search was completed then before it was taken off by the tow company.
So fair to say those policies and procedures, that you use your own discretion, your training, your experience to kind of make a judgment call on seeing exactly what you do.
Correct, sir.
Thank you, Trooper. I have nothing further.
Any further questions?
Trooper, during the course of your investigation prior to the search, did you, you said that you did a CCH of my client, is that true?
I believe it was completed by another trooper on scene, and then I've been notified of it.
And as far as you know, there was no convictions for any firearm related offenses, is that true?
To my knowledge, yes.
And there was no convictions for any type of delivering, manufacturing any controlled substances, is that true?
Correct.
I have no additional questions, John.
Anything based on that?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, sir.
Any further witnesses?
No further witnesses, Your Honor.
Any questions?
No, Your
Argument?
Your Honor, with respect to argument, I would just note that I believe that the search warrant in and of itself, I believe, was defective. I believe that it was overly broad in terms of being able to search the entire residence and all of its personal effects. I believe that at this point, there was no sufficient nexus between my client and a firearm or drugs or anything else and the home. There was no evidence of that during the initial traffic stop. The officers were able to look inside of the vehicle with their flashlights. They did not notice anything at that time, indicated that my client was nervous. That doesn't seem to be very uncommon, that the MSP trooper comes into contact with individuals that are nervous during traffic stop encounters. In addition to the fact that my client had warrants out for his arrest. There was also some information inside of that search warrant as it relates to a box of Narcan, which I believe that the officers discovered this by way of a faulty inventory search. I believe that the policy that they have is not really a policy. It's pretty much, it's very loose. I don't think that they have any really outlined written procedure done as to how that they conduct these. It's just kind of on an ad hoc case by case basis. when you look to the stop, or I'm sorry, when you look to the search and whether or not when it's an inventory search, it's very clear that that cannot be used for investigatory means. And I believe that this search was used for investigatory means, despite the testimony from the officer. It appears that they wanted to get more of something so that they could search the entire residence and premises for personal effects in addition to Mr. Martinez. That's the nexus that they were trying to create. That was the purpose of the inventory search. They could have waited. They could have waited until the search warrant was signed, but they didn't. And I believe that based upon the officer's testimony that it was 10 feet away, parked in a parking lot, and the residents, that Emilio could have ran out and gotten to that vehicle and fled, that doesn't seem plausible to me. I don't think that that's credible based upon the positioning of the vehicle. Additionally, and the amount of officers that were there was a large amount of officers on site. So I believe that in some that it was overly broad, and not only that it was misleading because there was information in there not only about the inventory search and this Narcan, but also the fact that my client had been convicted of violent offenses, that being unarmed robbery, which he's not convicted of. So I believe that in relying on the information in that search warrant, not only was the request overly broad, but I also believe that it was tainted because of the information in there was either one, misleading, or two, not true. So I would request that the court suppress all of the evidence that was found inside of the home based upon this faulty search warrant for the reasons that I just stated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, I think as is often the case with these search warrant cases, we have to look at the totality of the circumstances. It's not just that Mr. Martinez was nervous when he stopped the first conducted. We just heard Trooper Neal testify as to, in all the ways his nervousness stood out. And not only that, he's nervous and he shoves the car in gear, drives off, dragging two troopers along with him. They eventually track him down to this house, do their own research, house on Andre, do their own research. They determine that that's an address linked to him through parole. Prior to them doing anything, they made numerous attempts to try to get Mr. Martinez to come out of the house. They would also note that since he's on parole, really at that point, they could have called his parole agent and they could have just went in there without a warrant. Due to the fact that I'm sure his parole terms have that in there. As far as the search of the vehicle goes, I do have a case in 2020, People versus Collins, that was in Detroit. Traffic stop was conducted under similar circumstances. Police did an inventory search. They found a black cooler under the passenger side seat, looked in it and had cocaine. That search was held to be valid. I don't think that's too distinct from this one. And as the trooper testified, the Narcan was only found later. That was only added to the search warrant after they had already begun drafting. Before that, they already had enough to begin drafting a search warrant, go in there and try to get Mr. Martinez. Additionally, they spent some time trying to get him out of the house. They went through every single step that they should have gone to in order to get this search warrant. And even then, they could still be able to fall back on the good faith doctrine regarding search warrants, which is brought up in our brief and our response. Just briefly, there's nothing on its face in this search warrant that suggests that there was any illegal activity. And I would ask that the court deny the defendant's motion.
Okay. Well, I did have the chance. I was the one actually on duty that night. Received the call. It is procedure usually common for me that I just place the officer or the trooper that calls or detective under oath. I usually don't ask for anything further. So then that just leads me to open up the affidavit. On that evening, I did open up the affidavit and I never after having reviewed the affidavit, noting that the defendant was alleged to have fled the stop. Also, given that the allegations with regard to dragging troopers, in addition to the allegations that there were outstanding warrants, and then given that the allegation that the defendant was also on probation. Taking the circumstances as a whole, let me say first, I thought the motion that the defense brought forth was well argued and well positioned to go through each of the items in the affidavit, and was done certainly with great zeal on behalf of the defendant. However, taking each one of those allegations and each one of the paragraphs and looking at them as a whole, the court believes that probable cause was established in that for the search to be conducted, and the fact that he did flee, he then went into the home. There was a proper inventory search, and that the vehicle, under the guidelines and based on the fact that it was used in the commission of a felony, alleged felony, then so that could be inventoried as it was being towed, before being towed even. So from that, the items there were properly seized. Then looking at each of the items that were found in the car and the circumstances surrounding the stop, that then this court believed established probable cause in order for a search to be made of the residence. With regard to the possession argument that was made, it is generally the case that there must be something shown as to possession. It's my understanding that based in the affidavit that that it was a shared residence or a shared bathroom. Some of those are factual in nature. I don't think we've gotten to that part yet. But I think we will if we don't. So for that reason, looking at everything as a whole, the court will have to deny the motion to suppress. So I'll reserve for appeal. Is there anything else?
Not from the people, yeah.
Your Honor, there really wasn't really questions about my constructive possession argument. I would just like to reserve that argument at the time of the prelim, if that in fact is
Absolutely.
ran.
Yep.
Very well.
I understand that. And so if something is brought up there, absolutely.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I will just note that we are awaiting back some discovery on that as well, and that may assist us in resolving that issue too.
Okay, that sounds fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Be safe, be well, sleep sweet, and much love.